Welcome to the College Football Bros. I'm Ryan Newman.
And I'm Michael Newman.
All right. In today's episode, we are going to talk about the biggest Heisman snubs of all time. So, how we'll kind of do this, there's so many to consider here. And we got to be honest. It's like you're splitting hairs, and we're not going to be, we're going to be honest here. Like, it's really hard to decide, like, some of the biggest snubs. So, we really want to just put out a lot out there. So, we'll kind of give a ton of one of them.
I was a big baby about this episode because Ryan and I were texting each other, hey, what should the episode be tomorrow? And Ryan came up with this idea. I was like, okay, yeah, that is a good idea. Let's talk about some Heisman snubs. And then I started looking at it, and I'm like, I need a full week to comb through every year, look at all the stats, but I don't have a full week. We got a day job, I got a baby, I got a life. Yeah. But I do want to, I don't want to just, I told Ryan, like, I'm going to be BSing the listeners and the viewers if we do this. And you're like, you can do it, Michael. Just like, just look at some lists. They don't know it's BS.
Come on now.
No, well, I just want to be honest. But I did, I took a couple hours to go through it. And, I feel a little better now, but it's still really hard.
No, it is. And, like, whenever we do rankings or whenever anybody does rankings, people get all bent out of shape over, like, oh, you should have had this person ahead of them or whatnot. And before we even start, we'll say, you're probably right. Like,
well, that's what the comments are for. That's what
like it's legit Discord, and it's a matter of opinion, and it's all for fun. But so we'll throw out a bunch of honorable mentions that we feel worth mentioning. And then at the end, we'll each have a top three that I was able to convince Michael to finally do. So
right before the episode, I was like, why don't we just throw out a bunch of snubs and talk about them? And Ryan's like, no, you got to do a top three. And so
at least give me a top three. Like, what else are we doing?
I don't like it, but I did it.
Yeah. So let's get going. All right, Michael, you give me one of your, lower honorable mentions if you have any there.
Okay. Well, in 2019, Joe Burrow should not have won.
That's one of the most, like, not, that case is like he clearly does. I mean,
there's another episode. That's another one where it was like
that's never
no doubter.
Yeah,
because they always talk about snubs. Yeah, we're just here repeating snubs.
Ooh, okay, maybe next episode, or we could do another. Do another Patreon episode. Maybe we could do.
That's an idea.
Like clear Heisman winners where there was no debate and there was right. Ooh, I like that.
Patreon.com/collegefootballbros. Subscribe.
Joe Burrow's definitely won. There's your tease, guys. He's definitely won.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, so you're looking for a snub that was not on my... Well, I'll just start out. I'm going to go to 2020.
Okay.
Oh, camera went out. I'm gone. You know why? This is because I was complaining too much before the episode. And my camera probably overheated. Well,
and it's gone.
All right. Well, listeners don't care. So going to 2020, I'm not going to say that this is a snub because Devonta Smith was great. Yeah. And especially now the Heisman. Here's another thing. In this episode, Ryan, were you considering bowl games and saying, wow, in hindsight,
nah, I mean, maybe once, but like just as more of like a, like, see, you should have done it, but not entirely. No, not entirely.
Yeah, I don't think it should count at all because that's not when they voted. System. I'm back. Yeah. I'm back on camera. Not to worry.
Yeah.
Okay. But so Devonta Smith became even clearer of a Heisman winner. Like, he had a great playoff and especially the national championship. That I think he got injured like early in the second half or maybe late first half, but still put up like 200 yards or something crazy. So
he was amazing.
He kind of cemented it there. But I want to bring it up is because I wonder what would have happened if Mac Jones were not just some random 3-star who didn't have a lot of expectations. Like if he was just, let's say Trevor Lawrence had that sort of a stature out of high school and had, in this case, it would be waiting in the wings to get the job and came in with more hype. I wonder if Mac Jones would have won because he had maybe a top 2 or 3 statistical quarterback season of all time.
Yeah.
I mean, I know now it's easier for quarterbacks to get numbers, but at the time it was the highest pass efficiency rating of any quarterback ever in a single season, higher than Joe Burrow. Not as quite as voluminous as Joe
Yeah.
Burrow, but still big numbers. 11.2 yards per pass attempt, 41 touchdowns, 4 picks, 77% completions. Like, it was unbelievable. And
Yeah.
we've talked about this before, but if Jalen Waddle hadn't gotten hurt, because he was next.
Exactly.
Jalen Waddle and Devonta Smith, I think Waddle might have even had a few more yards when he got hurt, or at least it was close. So in that case, there's no way Devonta Smith would have won the Heisman if Waddle stayed healthy, and
That's
maybe it
the
would have gone
thing
to
there.
Mac Jones.
Yeah. No, that's a good point. I mean, I think after even, all things considered, Waddle did get hurt and Smith stepped up and was still managed to put up insane
Yeah.
numbers, even though teams
He was
were
deserving.
trying to lie. He was definitely deserving, but you made a good argument there for Mac Jones. And I do find that interesting. Good point.
Again, not saying he's a snub, but just
Right.
kind of interesting.
Yeah. I have a couple of those too, where it's like, I'm not saying it's should have happened, but
Well, let's hear it.
All right. So for me here, just a couple interesting things that I found looking at this. Ty Detmer, he won the Heisman in 1990. You know how many interceptions he threw that year?
Well, I'm getting the feeling that it's like a lot, so I'll say 17.
28.
Oh,
He threw 28 interceptions and he won the Heisman. How does that happen?
That's a lot.
What?
It's too much.
I could not believe that. I was like, what the? How? How do you win the Heisman throwing 28 picks? That's the fifth most ever.
Did that lead? Oh, okay, so that had to have led the nation that year.
Pretty sure it led the nation that year. I didn't look that year, but I looked all time and it was fifth.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm assuming it led that year, but I don't get it. I mean, he threw 41 touchdown passes, which is a lot for 1990.
Yeah,
but come on, 28.
That seems
picks?
hard to. It's hard. It's hard to believe that he would have made up for that enough to win
exactly.
the Heisman.
Like I that year, I probably would have voted for Bieniemy, Eric Bieniemy, Colorado running back. Mm-hmm. Just looking back at the stats and stuff, but wow, I found that very, very interesting. Like fifth most interceptions ever, but he won a Heisman.
He won that. So. Wow, it's like a Brett Favre type season.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. That's interesting. Mm-hmm. Okay, let's see some other honorable mentions. Who did I have here? Well, couldn't find a better guy to list here. O.J. Simpson of USC.
Yeah. I left him off my list just because he's OJ.
Yeah. Well, at the time.
Yeah, I know. It's fair.
Time, we didn't know. We didn't know. Yeah. So Gary Beeman of UCLA won it, quarterback. And you can't just look at stats of quarterbacks from back then because it's so different to today. You have to compare it at least to other quarterbacks of the era. But he was outside of the top 20 in the nation in passing yards, had 8 touchdowns, 7 picks, which as a ratio wasn't bad then, but still it wasn't a lot of touchdowns. And he only rushed for 227 yards. So I'm not sure how he won it. OJ for USC led the nation in rushing yards, tied for second in touchdowns, also beat UCLA head-to-head, USC did, and OJ scored a long game-winning touchdown run in that game. So, Sorry.
I mean, that's definitely a deserving one. I just, OJ's not deserving is the only thing. So, but you're right. Fair. You're right. Yeah. All right. Here's one that doesn't really get mentioned much. Tony Dorsett in 1975. So he won it in 76.
I had this one. You know what? This one is on my top 3. Is in my top 3.
Wow. Well, you just
chill,
that,
Ryan.
But...
I made the top 3 like 10 minutes ago. Okay, I didn't,
but this one's not. Okay. Okay. Fair enough.
Well, okay. Well, you make the case.
All right. The winner was Archie Griffin, who that was a second back to that was back to back. He rushed for 1,450 yards, but just 4 touchdowns.
4 touchdowns. I'm not a big touchdowns guy because
I know, not a big
opportunity, but 4.
Yeah, I know exactly. Same with me. If it's like 15 to 22 or something, like okay, well, whatever. Whatever. But like 4, come on now. Yeah. So 1,450 yards, 4 touchdowns. Tony Dorsett rushed for 236 more yards and had 9 more touchdowns. Plus, he averaged 1.1 yards more per carry. So, like, he was better in every single way. Played top teams. You know, he played Pitt. They were finished. I think they finished 15th. So they weren't like a bad team or anything. So, I mean, Ohio State was better, which is, I think, partially why Archie Griffin got it. But I just don't see, and Dorsett was a physical freaking specimen, like playing for a good team. So I'm not sure. I think that was a screw. I thought Tony Dorsett should have won it. I'm not sure what happened there.
It was in my, I had this third on my list, but I didn't even have necessarily one snub. Like you could pick Tony Dorsett. There was like Chuck Muncie for Cal at running back.
Yeah,
also
there was
had
another
a great
guy too.
Year.
I forget.
There were just
USC's
more
guy. USC had a guy.
Well, yeah. Was it?
It wasn't like a super famous name.
Ricky Bell, I think.
Yes.
Led the nation in rushing yards, and he had. Like,
I felt like Griffin should have been like 5th.
I know it just didn't seem like he should have even been up there. So that's why that was on my list. Okay, all right. Let's see here. Oh well, okay. Let's go to 2001 because this was honestly one of the first Heismans that I remember following because it was because Nebraska quarterback Eric Crouch won it, and so
it's hard to gauge these two.
I know. So I don't feel strongly about this one because option quarterback versus traditional quarterback.
Not even traditional, like air raid.
Well, yeah, exactly. Playing for Steve Spurrier, Rex Grossman was. I think I probably would vote Rex Grossman if I was there at the time, just because, like his numbers at Florida were gaudy. I think it's maybe because he was a sophomore, which at the time, nowadays they don't care about that. I think.
Yeah.
But I think at the time it was still a thing. You know, they favored going with seniors over underclassmen. But Grossman led the nation in yards per pass attempt. He was first among power conference quarterbacks in passing yards and touchdowns. Like he just had a huge year. And Crouch was really good and kind of carried a Nebraska team that, you know, as we saw in the national championship, maybe wasn't the most amazing around him, but I don't know.
Yeah. That one, I mean, that's a fair argument to make there. And it's a very difficult one because Crouch just, like you said, he kind of carried that team that wasn't that great, but also it's just, he wasn't going to put up big stats. I mean, especially as a passer. I mean, his passing stats were worse than you would even like for a option quarterback. But
wasn't it like 5.5 yards per pass attempt?
I didn't even, was it that low? I thought it was
no, maybe I was. You know what the problem there was? You know what I did? One of those guys where even though it lists on Sports Reference his rushing stats first.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It's like, this guy must have been a running back.
Treated him as a running back. I know.
So maybe that's what I was looking at. Maybe it was 5.5 yards.
He had 7 touchdown passes to 10 picks. I think he completed 55% of his passes. I can't recall the yards per attempt, but
it probably was more than that.
Probably more than that because they would usually only throw deep. But but his rushing, he ran for like 1,100 yards or something like that, and you know, so that's a huge, obviously from.
And it's like when he's got to decide when to pitch it. Yeah, running the option. Like, it's not just his rushing yards that count. So I don't know how to weigh that, but.
And his was also a career-ish achievement, you know.
Well, I don't like that.
That's what they said at the time, and I understand it even to this day. Like, if you want to say Rex Grossman deserves it, I'm not going to say, like, no, you're wrong. Like, okay, that's fine. I'm just glad Crouch won it. So you're looking up the average yards per attempt, Mike?
And it was 8. So, okay.
Yeah, because they just throw it to Tracy Wistrom deep, like every time they play action.
Yeah.
That was it.
But 124 pass efficiency rating. Not good.
Not good. Yeah, he struggled through the air, but okay, that's fair enough. All right, what do I got here? I'll go with, where's my number 9? Oh, there it is. Marshall Faulk, San Diego State, 1992. He had 1,630 rushing yards, 15 touchdowns. His problem was that he played for a bad San Diego State team. I think they went 5-5. But he was the best player that year, man. There he was. Gino Torretta from Miami won it. He won the Heisman, and then Faulk was in first. And Gino Torretta put up pretty solid numbers. I won't, but Faulk was amazing. It's just played for the Aztecs, man.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Let's see here. Do I have any other honorable mentions?
Okay, I'll go. I got
Yeah, I
plenty.
might not.
Darren McFadden. Uh, so when people talk about McFadden, usually they talk about '07, because that's when he had like arguably his best year. But that was the year Tim Tebow won it, and Tebow was unreal that year.
Yeah.
I think Tebow did deserve it. Like rushing, passing, he was incredible. So
Mm-hmm.
like to me, like okay, McFadden maybe, but no, I think Tebow deserved it. But I'm going to say Arkansas or McFadden in '06, the year before. His stats were slightly worse than his '07 numbers, but Troy Smith won it that year, in '06. And he put up good numbers. Troy Smith put up good
He was
numbers, but
good.
yeah, he was good. He was good, but McFadden just carried Arkansas. I mean, they did like everything around him. He ran the wildcat. He passed. He threw for 3 touchdowns that year. He rushed for 16 or almost 1,650 yards and 15 total touchdowns. He just meant so much to that team that won 10 games. Like without him, I mean, they're nowhere near. I mean, and they may get 7 wins or something like that. They were just terrible. They had Casey Dick and Mitch Mustaine were their 2 QBs that year.
Yes.
Funny and interesting. They threw the exact amount of passes that year, both of them. And they were horrible. Like they just put up terrible numbers. Yet McFadden just carried that team. So, he was amazing. I know Hog fans always will be like, "Hey, McFadden should have won," and I can see it. I just think they're choosing the wrong season.
All right. I was a classmate of Mitchell Mustaine.
That's right.
We were in like a very small, one of the breakaway classes, and
yeah, that's right.
When
you
he
liked
transferred
him, right?
to USC. I don't know. I don't really have an opinion.
Oh, okay.
But I just remember he went by Mitchell. I call him Mitch. He's like, it's Mitchell. It's like, thought it was Mitch.
Sorry. That's what you go by on CBS.
Himself.
Yeah.
Well, then he ended up getting arrested, but that's a different story.
Oh. He did. I don't remember that.
It was for like I think like selling prescription drugs or something like that. I want to say. I don't want to. I could be slandering
who among
him
us
right now.
hasn't done that?
Hey,
Come on now.
But yeah, he was a real. Sorry, Mitchell, but he was a real bust.
Yeah, he was a big time recruit, and he led Arkansas sort of.
Well,
to
they were like
wins
because he started. They were like 6-0 or something, and then they benched him. But it was they were in spite of him. Like he wasn't doing well.
It was McFadden.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I don't think I have. You know what? I do. How about 2003? Again, Jason White won the Heisman. It's so hard to compare quarterbacks to different positions. Thought that this is one that could have gone the other way because Jason White of Oklahoma, if I didn't say that. But Larry Fitzgerald from Pitt was incredible. Like when you talk about most outstanding, it's hard not to think that Larry Fitzgerald was more outstanding. 95 catches, 1,672 yards, 22 touchdowns, massive numbers, especially back then. He had over 1,000 more receiving yards than anyone else on the team.
Yeah, I've also had that stat. Nice.
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
That's an original one too. It wasn't
I know. We had to like just look for it on the stats. It wasn't like it's quote or anywhere.
No. Yeah.
Nice job.
So he carried the team.
Barely, but he did.
And he was just passed the eye test, right? Like you watched him, he was just like a freak.
Incredible. And like so with the statistic of 1,000 more yards than anybody, like everybody knew they were going to him.
Mm-hmm.
Yet he was still able to come up with these amazing catches. And you see these old highlight films of him in practice and stuff, and just he was amazing. He was incredible. So very deserving. I'll rattle off 2 here, kind of. Adrian Peterson in 2004 for Oklahoma. He was the true freshman.
He was great.
That was part of the reason why he didn't win. He was a true freshman.
I
know Leinart had a pretty good year.
I mean, Leinart had an amazing year, and I don't know. I know I'm a USC fan here, but I wasn't at the time. But it's like it's hard to say that someone was a snub when Leinart was great.
He was very, very good, but Leinart had studs all around him, but fair enough. But as a true freshman, he had over 1,900 yards. I just feel like Peterson.
He was outstanding. He was he was a beast.
Like I thought he was the best player, but I Leinart wasn't he had a good statistical season, but I just feel like he was a little bit more of a product of what was around him.
Fair, especially in hindsight.
Yeah.
But let's we got to talk about, we've gone this far in the episode, and I assume it's not going to be in your top. Well, maybe it will be in your top 3. 2005? No, it's not going to be in your top 3. So 2005 is Reggie.
Right.
Reggie.
Yeah.
You can't I saw lists out there
Well,
with Vince Young as a snub. I vehemently disagree, because Reggie Bush in 2005, first of all, you vote before the national title game.
Yeah.
So
I know.
it is what it is. But even if you did vote, like Reggie Bush, you talk about, I mean, Vince Young's great too, but you can't say Reggie Bush didn't deserve the Heisman. The guy was unbelievable, highlight reel, 8.7 yards per carry, getting a lot of carries, and receiving yards, and he's one of the best college football players I've ever seen. So was Vince Young, but it's just kind of tough luck that both of them were in the same year, had such great seasons.
You could argue both, and you would be right. I mean, after looking at the national title game,
you can't have Vince Young as one of the biggest snubs. I don't think.
I don't have him in my top 3. I had him an honorable mention just because, like, I'm not saying he totally deserved it over Reggie Bush, but you can make the argument. I mean, with the hindsight of the national title game, of course, then it really makes sense. Before the national title game, obviously Reggie Bush makes more sense. But
or at least like as much sense.
Yeah. But the Rose Bowl moment,
Vince Young, you can say, is one of the best seasons ever to not win the Heisman.
Right.
And had he won it, then Reggie Bush would be one of the best seasons ever to not win the Heisman.
Yeah, they were 2 amazing players, for sure. All right, let's go with I'm saying Stanford, but it's not really a snub. Sort of Stanford. So like,
they've just had some great guys not win it.
There was 3 years in a row where they finished second, 2009 through 2011. 2 years of Andrew Luck. He lost to Cam Newton. Understandable. It's the right call. Then to RG3 the year after. Again, it was understandable. RG3 was a little better statistically. Like, it made sense. So 2 years Andrew Luck finished second. Then Toby Gerhart lost in 2009 to Mark Ingram. Maybe Gerhart deserved it over Ingram in that scenario, but unfortunate. But then, he moved forward a few years. Christian McCaffrey.
Well, now you're stepping on my top 3.
Christian McCaffrey finished second in 2015. And that's not all, though. Then you got Bryce Love, who finished second.
Bryce Love,
finished second to Baker Mayfield in 2007. So that was 5 second-place finishes in 9 years for Stanford. That's insane. Brutal. I mean, it's brutal that not one of them won it, right? And honestly, like, other than McCaffrey, it was the right call, in my opinion. Like,
who won ahead of Bryce Love? What year was that again?
Baker Mayfield in 2017.
Oh, it was Baker. Yeah, you said that.
And he had a great year. Like,
I mean, come on.
You could have had Bryce Love. That would have been but I don't think you can say for sure, like, oh yeah, he deserved it.
Look at Bryce Love. So he had 2,118 yards, 19 rushing touchdowns, 8.1 yards per carry.
He was amazing.
Hard to be much better than that, but Baker Mayfield is one of the all-time great quarterbacks.
Yeah. So I don't know. I didn't pick one out there, but it was just like I had to mention poor Stanford. Like, at least they got Plunkett, but
Okay.
All right. Top 3 time?
Top 3 time.
All right.
Not loving it. All right, I'll go first. Number 3. Do you want to start from 1 or 3? We count
3.
Okay. All right. Well, we talked about it. Is I guess Tony Dorsett, Chuck Muncie. Take your pick. I should have picked someone. I didn't. But it's Tony Dorsett, or not Tony Dorsett. Sorry, Archie Griffin's second Heisman.
Yeah.
Don't think it deserved it. It's not.
Yep.
That is a sacred thing, getting that second Heisman. He's the only one.
Yeah, you should have earned that more, man. Yeah.
He should have earned it more. 4 touchdowns. Sorry. No.
Dude, I know.
How did that happen? I would love to. How did that happen? I don't know. Did they have another running back on the team that they went to at the goal line, or who knows? But it's crazy.
I don't think they were passing the ball a ton that year. So, that one's surprising. All right, fair enough. Maybe I'm going Homer, but at number 3, I took Tommy Frazier, Nebraska,
A lot of people
1995.
agree there.
Yeah, a ton of people agree with that. He had 31 total touchdowns that year through just 4 interceptions. But again, as we kind of mentioned with Crouch in 2001, you kind of have to look past the stats a little bit for those Nebraska quarterbacks just because of the offense that they had. And, he just was a machine and so good at running that offense effectively. And that 1995 team, of course, went undefeated and, widely regarded as the best team of all time. And he was maybe the biggest reason why they were just so good. He was so good. And Eddie George won it that year, and he had a great year, no doubt about it. But uh, Frazier just was seemingly the best player on the best player on the best team of all time. It feels like you should win the Heisman, and then of course the national title game happened, and of course with hindsight you would have given it to Frazier then because he would just. What they did to Florida, 62-24. He had like 200 rushing yards and just dominated.
There's another episode, Heisman's that would have changed if you could vote after the bowl. Vince Young would be one. He would have won it.
Yep.
And Tommy Frazier.
Maybe McCaffrey too.
Unanimous. Yeah.
Against Iowa.
Yeah, I don't actually remember that.
He just totally dominated. Like from the first play, he just middle pass or something for like 80 yards and just the whole, maybe had a kick return or a punt. He was just like, Iowa couldn't touch him. It was an insane performance by McCaffrey in that game.
Well, all right. So you've got your number 3. So I'll go to my number 2. You know what? Ndamukong Suh, I put there. You convinced me, Ryan. I want you to make the case, though. I think you can make a better case, but it's, Is this your number 1? Is this your number 1?
Suh is my number 1, yeah. So,
all right, well, let's wait on it. Who's your number 2?
McCaffrey, Christian McCaffrey from Stanford.
Well, he's my number 1. Okay, all right. So
all right.
I'll make the case for Christian McCaffrey. So Derrick Henry, this was 2015. Derrick Henry, Alabama, great season, 2,200 yards rushing.
Very good.
But it's one of those where it's a hard argument against it. But every Alabama running back, at that
Ingram and
Although you could say it's the same for Stanford after the guys we listed, but McCaffrey was just like when you talk about outstanding. So he had 2,000 rushing yards as well. And was on top of that, though, was basically a wide receiver. 45 catches, 645 yards for a running back.
That's amazing.
Had more yards per carry than Derrick Henry, not running behind the Alabama offensive line, presumably with less talent around him than the Alabama team. Also had a punt return touchdown, kick return touchdown, did great things in the return game. I just think overall he had way more of an impact on his team and just was more dynamic. And it's just that he played late at night for Stanford and not for Alabama.
Agree. I mean, if you traded them, like I don't think Derrick Henry puts up the numbers that McCaffrey did at Stanford. Like, and McCaffrey puts up just as much, if not more, at Alabama. McCaffrey was way more valuable to his team than Henry was. Like McCaffrey, he was Stanford. Like he was so good. He was so good. Just
he was
like
great.
You said, he was late at night and not a ton of people got to see him, but fun to watch. All right. Number 1, Mr. Ndamukong Suh, Nebraska, 2009. D tackle, 85 tackles. That's pretty much all you really need to say. 85. How does a D tackle get 85 tackles? That's just amazing.
I know, especially when he is so dominant and was dominant the year before. So everyone knew him. He was getting double and triple teamed. You're not supposed to get put up stats. Those guys aren't. You're supposed to make, when everyone's double teaming you, you make a great impact by allowing other guys to make plays. But he
still found a way. Yeah, exactly.
Find you a D tackle who does both.
Yeah, exactly. I can't. I mean, 85 tackles, 20 and a half tackles for loss, 12 sacks for a D tackle is just insane. He had a pick, actually a big pick against Missouri that helped turn the game around and led Nebraska to a win. To me, it's the best season from a defensive player that I've ever seen not in person, but I've ever seen. Well, in person, I saw him at 09. So we went to the Arizona Holiday Bowl game. But the best season I've ever seen from a defensive player. just me
Agreed.
personally, in my, I started really paying attention in early 2000s. Never seen a more dominant defensive player. Uh, Not even close. He just controlled the games, and you saw him in the Big 12 title game against Texas.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like 4.5 sacks, I think it was, versus Colt McCoy finished second in the Heisman. He just made them look like chumps. He just dominated Texas's offensive line, like you said. There was two guys on him pretty much every play, and there's
He just threw him
multiple.
around like rag
Yeah,
dolls. Like,
he threw him around or ran around because he's so
yeah.
athletic, and he was incredible. Mark Ingram won that year. He had 1,650 rushing yards, 17 touchdowns. Give me a break. Like
Yeah.
those are good numbers, but
Yeah.
like for a Heisman running back, that's not that great, especially 2017 or 2009. Sorry. So you should have pretty big numbers. But if you look at Sue's stats for a D tackle, it's just like earth-shattering numbers. Not even close. So Sue was by far the best player that year. I wish they would be more willing to give it to defensive players. I don't know how he didn't win it. How did he not win it? Because they
Well,
lost.
he didn't even come. What did he finish?
He
Third?
got fourth. He got fourth.
Yeah, fourth. I was gonna say, yeah.
How's he get fourth? I mean, he was, it doesn't make sense to me. That's such a screw. If I was a voter, like now, I would be more willing to vote for
I think
defensive
he
guys
would have
and
got a
stuff.
lot. I don't think he would have won, but he would have been a lot closer if that season happened this year. I just feel like, I don't know, the tide seems to be turning. Like,
Yeah.
who was it? Aiden Hutchinson and
Will Anderson.
Will Anderson got a lot of buzz, and they,
Yeah.
neither one of them was necessarily. I mean, a lot of people thought Will Anderson was clearly better than Hutchinson, though.
Right.
I guess a lot of people didn't, because I think Hutchinson finished ahead of him. But like, they weren't Sue.
No.
So if
Exactly.
and it was just one guy, they were kind of splitting the defensive vote with each other. If that season happened again today, again, I don't think he'd necessarily win. Well, maybe he would, but he would have been closer.
It's just too bad that they didn't have a decent offense that year. Otherwise, I think Sue would have won it because, they would have had an amazing year. And they would have been national title contender because that defense was the best in the country that year. And with a decent offense, they could have competed for a national title. They just had such a horrible, horrible offense. But Sue was best defensive player I've ever seen.
Okay. All right.
What's the second best D tackle like you've ever seen? Like impactful.
Well, I remember one year from
defensive player.
We had defensive player, hard to say. Nick Fairley had one amazing year. Yeah. There's probably other guys I'm not thinking of, but that one, when you say that, kind of stands out because it feels like he put up big numbers too. I'll pull it up.
Yeah, go ahead and look up because there's a couple other guys like Luke Kuechly had some pretty big moments, but he was BC and that's obviously not that great. So, but Honey Badger had some big moments. Mm-hmm. But it's really hard to.
Okay, here's Nick Fairley. 60 tackles, 24 tackles for loss, 11 and a half sacks.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
That's pretty good. It's not quite Sue level, but it's right there.
It's pretty close. I mean,
yeah.
But you do feel like Sue just commanded more. Fairley was a good rusher, no doubt about it. But Sue did everything.
Sue had 25 more tackles. That's a lot more tackles.
Yeah, it's the thing. Like he stopped the run as even better than Fairley because he was so big and just strong. But yeah, it's obviously I'm a Nebraska homer and fan, but like I feel like I'm looking at Sue objectively. Like if anybody's listening in the comments, tell us like if you're watching on YouTube, like who do you think had a more dominant season than Sue in 2009 as far as defensive player? I don't think there is one, in my opinion.
You mean who? Not just in 2009, any defensive player.
Any defensive player ever.
Yeah, ever's a long time, so I'm open to someone, but yeah.
Yeah, I'm open to it. I'm just I
don't know who it is.
You Woodson? You're gonna say Woodson?
But I think part of his appeal was the return game and
exactly play a little offense.
Receiver. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I think exactly. So
we didn't bring up Herschel Walker as well. I think maybe it was his it his freshman season or did freshmen not play back then? I
It
don't
might have been
recall.
his sophomore year, like in 80, maybe 1980, or I can't remember. But yeah, I look back at those years and I was like, you could
Okay.
have mentioned him. But I think it was him and like, I'm trying to remember who he would have had to. He got snubbed, but over, under. I don't know if it was Earl Campbell. It was somebody else though.
Let's
Like,
go to
okay,
1980 Heisman voting right now.
might have been 81 or something.
Well, Herb Walker finished third in 1980,
Okay.
and first was George Rogers of
Oh, that's
South
right, South
Carolina,
Carolina.
who
Yeah,
did put up bigger numbers.
yeah, he did
So
exactly.
it was,
Yeah,
yeah, it doesn't seem like too much of a crazy one there. So,
yeah,
all right, well, anything else? We all good?
yeah. That's my list. I mean, I'm sure others will have some other opinions, but I like hearing about the opinions. I want other people to comment on our channel here and be like, hey, what do you think? Like,
Yeah,
it's
I
an interesting
agree.
discussion. Like,
Yeah, no, it was a good idea,
answer my
Ryan. Sorry.
question. Answer my question. Who had more of an impact than Sue?
Okay.
People, please give me that in the chat or in the comments or in the Discord if you're a Patreon.
Okay. Sorry, I was a baby, Ryan, about coming up with this list, but
It's all
I'm
right.
glad you helped me power through it. And yeah, thank you for listening or watching this episode of the College Football Bros. As always, we brought it up earlier, but we'd really appreciate your subscription to Patreon. Helps us keep this thing going and, put out episodes every week. So you can do that. Yeah, patreon.com/College Football Bros. It is $5 a month. So again, thank you. We'll see you next time.